Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a very spicy 5-color Converge deck featuring lots of sweeper effects and lots of planeswalkers, and also, of course, as the name implies, lots of Converge cards. So let's get started here by taking a look at our 2-drops, since we don't have any 1-drops in this deck, with a lot of lands coming into play tapped on the first couple turns. We've got a Jace, Vryn's Prodigy. You probably all know him by now. Can tap to loot, and once you have 5 or more cards in your graveyard, he transforms into Jace Telepath Unbound that can shrink opposing creatures and can flash back cards from your graveyard. So a very useful planeswalker, because in this deck the looting ability will be very useful, as we need lots of different lands to produce different colors. And of course we also have a decent amount of instants and sorceries, especially sweeper effects that he can flash back, making him very valuable in this deck. Moving on, we have a Gatecreeper Vine, which is one of the more important cards in the deck, since it allows us to search up whatever land we need. We have at least one of each basic land, so he can find whatever land we desire, and can also block to protect our planeswalkers or against sacrifice effects like Flashback Marauder. It's an easy creature we can sacrifice. Then we have one of our first Converge cards. This is Skyrider Elf. By default, for a green and a blue, it's a 2/2 flyer, but we can pay one more for every color, basically up to a 5/5, so we can get a 5/5 flyer for 5 mana if we spend 1 mana of every color, which is pretty easy in this deck actually. It's usually going to be a 5/5 by turn 5 in this deck, and if you have to, you can also cast it earlier, so it's a flexible card as well. So against an aggro deck, playing this as a 3/3 for example to blank all their 2/2s is quite useful. And of course the flying ability, also useful in a format with lots of tokens and Gatecreeper Vines and Elvish Visionaries. So the Skyrider Elf is very valuable. Moving on, we have a 1 Reprisal just as a one-off that we can also flash back with our Jace, just to have some cheap interactivity for 2 mana, since we are going to be tapping out most of the time in this deck. So it's useful to have an instant that's very cheap and still impactful against pretty much all decks, since most decks will be running some big creatures. So I like having 1 Reprisal here. And then we have another mana fixer in Pilgrim's Eye, 3 colorless for a 1/1 flyer. Fills the same role as Gatecreeper Vine, but he's 3 colorless, so even if we're missing green mana, we can still cast him on the 3rd turn, and flying makes us block flyers as well, or pressure opposing planeswalkers for example. So another mana fixer brings us up to 7 mana fixers in creature form. And then we also have a Nissa Vastwood Seer, which also searches up a land and can transform into Nissa Sage Animist for card advantage. Most of the time you're going to be plussing her, the -2 only in some corner cases. And then the ultimate, of course, very good. Then we have another Converge card in Radiant Flames. This is a pretty powerful sweeper. For 3 mana you can basically deal 3 damage to all creatures most of the time. And since most of our creatures will be bigger than 3 toughness, it basically is a one-sided sweeper and very useful against aggro decks, or you can even combine it with other spells to take out bigger creatures. So these are 2 copies of a sweeper, and we'll have plenty more as we move on. We have a Roil Spout as well, also new from Battle for Zendikar. Put a creature on top of its owner's library, so nothing too special, especially at sorcery speed. But we also have the flexible option of casting it for 6 mana to awaken a land into a 4/4. So this gives us some late game power, and as you'll see later we have some other interactions with lands and awaken, so it's nice to have. And of course with Jace this is very powerful, setting the opponent back multiple turns. And also against the enchantment type decks where people put a lot of enchantments on one creature, it's a nice answer to those. Then we have another Converge card in Woodland Wanderer, 4/4, and is usually going to be a 6/6 for 4 mana if we pay 3 different colors of mana here plus the forest, so 4 different colors total. Gives us a 6/6 with Vigilance and Trample. A little less flexible than the Skyrider Elf. It's not like it's an X in the mana cost, but still usually going to be a 6/6 in this deck, which is quite powerful for just 4 mana. Then we have 1 copy of From Beyond as a token generator / tutor effect for our Ulamog. Spoiler alert. Just nice to have access to, since sometimes Ulamog is the only answer in a certain board state. We also don't have a ton of answers to cards like enchantments, so it's nice to have a way to search up Ulamog, and we also have another Eldrazi, or actually 2 other Eldrazi's that we can search up with From Beyond, making it quite versatile, and still making a 1/1 every turn is nice to protect all our planeswalkers. And moving on, we have a Brutal Expulsion, another rare from Battle for Zendikar. We have 1 or more options here available. We can either return a spell or creature to its owner's hand, and with spell they mean if an opponent casts a spell you can return it while it's on the stack. So you can basically counter a spell for a turn, the opponent will get it back and can recast it later. But it's kind of a remand effect if you know the remand card from the modern format. And then we have also the option of dealing 2 damage to a creature or planeswalker, as well as either bouncing a spell or a creature. Usually this will be bounce a creature, deal 2 damage to a creature, but if you can keep the mana open to basically delay a spell for a turn, it can be very powerful. So that's a Brutal Expulsion. No real synergy with the exiling part here, just as a valuable 4 mana instant that can again bounce those enchanted up creatures like Roil Spout can. Then we move on to another 2 copies of a sweeper effect in Languish. You'll know it. All creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn, and as you've seen, most of our win conditions here in Woodland Wanderer and the Skyrider Elf will most likely survive our own Languish, since they'll be 5/5 or 6/6. So that makes it also pretty one-sided, and gives us the 3rd and 4th copy of a sweeper effect. Then moving on, we get to some of our other planeswalkers. We have Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, just a very powerful planeswalker that can either make knight tokens every turn, can also turn into a creature himself to beat down, and if you have some spare loyalty or really have a lot of tokens in play, you can also use the emblem to give all creatures +1/+1 forever. And of course you can do all 3 modes, so making him very versatile, and also the knight being able to protect himself and other planeswalkers is very valuable. Then we get to Kiora, Master of the Depths, which is a ramp / card advantage card, and if you get to Ultimate her, it's pretty difficult to lose from there. So the most common modes is to play her and then perhaps -2 her, and then the turn after you can use her +1 ability to tap a land for mana, then untap that land and basically ramp you for 1, and then you can also untap a creature to basically give it vigilance. So a pretty versatile planeswalker here, and since we are a 5-color deck, being able to untap a land can actually also fix our mana in a weird way. So Kiora is also pretty fun to play with. Moving on, we have 2 more copies of a sweeper effect in Planar Outburst. So this is our 5th and 6th copy of a sweeper effect. This one simply destroys all non-land creatures and also has Awaken, so we can awaken a land into a 4/4 if we pay 8 mana with triple white. Triple white can be a little tough on the mana, but could happen for sure. So here the non-land creatures part is irrelevant with our other Awaken card, like Roil Spout for example. We can Roil Spout, and a turn after we can Outburst with Awaken and have lots of creatures still in play while destroying all other non-land creatures. And we can also awaken some of our man lands, as we'll get to in a bit. Moving on, we have a copy of Angelic Edict, which seems like a weird inclusion here. Not a very efficient card with 5 mana at sorcery speed, but being able to exile enchantments is actually quite valuable, since there are some very powerful enchantments running around, and exiling a creature is also nice against some of the new Eldrazi like Ulamog, which is otherwise indestructible and very hard to deal with. so exiling him is a pretty clean answer after he's done some damage already. Then we have another planeswalker here in Ob Nixilis, usually gonna play him and then kill one big problematic creature, or you can start plussing him to gain card advantage and maybe ultimate him to slowly win the game. So another very versatile and powerful planeswalker that is worth protecting. Up next is Sire of Stagnation, which is an Eldrazi, so we can search it up with our From Beyond, 6 mana for 5/7, and then the important part here is whenever an opponent plays a land, you get to exile the top 2 cards of his or her library, and you get to draw 2 cards. So whenever an opponent plays a land with Sire of Stagnation in play, you get to draw 2 cards, which basically mean that the opponent has to stop playing lands, otherwise they fall behind on the card advantage race. So very powerful, especially against the ramp decks, which are quite popular nowadays. Up next is another Eldrazi, which we can again tutor up with our From Beyond. This is a 6-mana Eldrazi, that's a 5/8, and when you cast Oblivion Sower, so it doesn't even have to resolve, you get to exile the top 4 cards of an opponent's library, and then get to play out all the lands that have been exiled, not only with Oblivion Sower, but also all previously exiled lands. You get to put them on a battlefield under your control, so usually we'll net about 2 lands, can also be a little more, can also be a little less, and since we are a 5-color deck, we can use all the lands we can get. Moving on, we have a copy of Part the Waterveil, 6 mana to take an extra turn. So this is very powerful if we have planeswalkers in play, because then we get to activate them once again, which can be very backbreaking for the opponent. And if we ever get to 9 mana, we can also awaken it to make a 6/6, as well as take an extra turn. So just a one-off to try out and to have some fun with. And moving on, our last card is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. 10 mana, 10/10, and the important part here, when you cast him you get to exile 2 target permanents, and also indestructible, and when he attacks you exile the top 20 cards of an opponent's library. So basically 2 attacks with Ulamog and it's game over for the opponent. So very hard to deal with, and of course we can also search it up with From Beyond, and the Cyan tokens can help cast Ulamog. Then we get to the complicated part of the deck, which is a mana base, which also is a reason why this deck is pretty difficult to pilot. We've got 2 plains, 1 island, 2 swamps, then 1 mountain and 3 forests. We do want to have early green for Gatecreeper Vine, but we also want to have 2 copies of swamp and plains, so we can search up those 2 basic lands to cast cards like Languish, Ob Nixilis, or Planar Outburst, and also Gideon. And then we get to our dual lands, where we have 2 Lumbering Falls, which is a man land, which for 4 mana can become a 3/3 hexproof creature. We also have Shambling Vent, which can become a 2/3 lifelink creature. And then we have 1 Smoldering Marsh, 1 Sunken Hollow, 2 Cinder Glade, 2 Canopy Vista, 2 Prairie Stream, and then probably the most important card in the deck, 4 copies of Evolving Wilds to search up all the basics we need. So that's the deck, that's a curve. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand, which is a very land heavy here, with Vine plus 5 lands. Although we do have pretty much all the mana we need, plus a sweeper. But yeah, I think we can do better. Alright, this hand is interesting, but I think we have a keeper, leading off by grabbing a forest here. And next turn likely gonna get a blue source. If we do draw one of our double white source cards here, we might be pretty far away from casting them. Our other option, I guess, was just playing out a tapped Smoldering Marsh, but then we still have 2 tap lands in hand. Alright, I think our plan to get a blue source is still valid. Might as well do it now. Gives our opponent a little more information, but that's fine. At least we don't forget to use it. So we could play this on the third turn, followed up with Brutal Expulsion, which is not bad, as our opponent plays a Core Castigator. Could also wait on the Skyrider Elf to make it a little bigger, as we will have all 5 colors, but we also have a 6-drop already, so I think just playing this out is fine. So our opponent can attack, but next turn we get to likely bounce a creature and kill a creature. And then in 2 turns we can Oblivion Sower it up, which will hopefully help us get to Ulamog, which is a little awkward to have in your opening hand. But at least we know that if we do get to 10 mana, we likely win the game. So down to 17 here. And now we have to decide which one we want to bounce and which one we want to kill. Which is also an interesting decision. Languish is also interesting, but I think we still want to use the Expulsion here. Just seems like a very good play. So attack for 3. And then I think I'm actually more worried about the Castigator than the Blade Whirl here. So let's kill the Castigator and bounce the Blade Whirl. Alright, that works. Also gets exiled, although won't really matter. So next turn we can Evolving Wilds, and if we really have to we can Languish, although I don't think we'll have to. And then hopefully we draw land for the Oblivion Sower. Opponent has a second Castigator and does not replay the other ally for some reason. Not sure why, and we drop Pilgrim's Eye, which is perfect. So let's attack, see what happens. Pilgrim's Eye also, alright, this makes sense. But I think we still attack there, even though we might suspect the Gideon's Reproach. And now we get to play Pilgrim's Eye plus Evolving Wilds, so next turn we are sure to cast Oblivion Sower. And we are getting a white source here, since we want 2 of those. And might as well grab another one here. So we already have double black, so the only combination we're missing is double blue for part the Water Veil. I guess we could have grabbed blue, given that Oblivion Sower might grab a white land from our opponent, but I think the white cards are pretty important if we draw them. That is Gideon and Planar Outburst. And now we also get to play Sower, knowing that we can Languish a turn later. This one has first strike, so we could just prevent 3 damage by blocking here. I think we can take it. If our opponent doesn't have another ally next turn, then he won't have first strike, so can't attack with the Castigator anymore. Alright, let's run out the Sower, target our opponent, and let's see how many lands we got. 2, nice, even an Evolving Wilds, which the ally deck uses for a retreat to Amiria, which then triggers it twice with landfall. But we're gonna make use of it by grabbing a blue source, which we can do right now, so we won't forget. Alright, we already had an island, so we can't actually grab another blue source. My bad, in which case I think we Let's grab a forest. And then Pilgrim's Eye can grab whatever else we might need. But at this point our mana looks pretty good. Just need to find another blue source at some point if we do draw the Water Veil. And our opponent's just running face first into our Languish here. So as long as he doesn't kill us here, I think we're fine. Also, our Sower will still be around after Languish, which is pretty sweet. Looming Spires, alright. Gives us +1/+1 and first strike. Also all allies have Menace here, as well as a lifelink from Lantern Scout, as well as first strike. So we have to double block a creature here if we want to kill one. Gideon's Reproach deals 4, so I can block whatever one I want here. Let's block the lifelinker, I guess. So opponent will kill the Pilgrim's Eye, and then we kill the Lantern Scout, take 6 down to 8. But our Sower's still around, and a Languish is going to be pretty nice here. I think I'll attack first, since even if our opponent blocks, we still won't lose a Sower, and our opponent is not super likely to block. So now we get to Languish. And play out our Gatecreeper, I guess. And then also the Pilgrim's Eye. Let's grab a mountain. Play it out. Play Pilgrim's Eye, and then maybe not next turn, but the turn after we could play out Ulamog, which is pretty sweet. Right, Evolving Wilds to thin out the deck. We also exiled some other allies here. Alright, Gideon is gonna put up a fight. It's a pretty good one. So, let's see what happens now. Let's take a look at our draw step. It's a land. Alright, at least next turn we'll have Ulamog. Or never mind, this turn we'll have Ulamog. That makes it a little easier. So, let's see. Yeah, I think at this point if we can't kill both red sources, we might as well exile both of these. Because the card I'm worried about are burn spells like Exquisite Firecraft. Because if our opponent draws 2 of them, we're at 8, that's 2 times 4, we're dead. Although I don't think the ally deck would run Exquisite Firecraft. So by exiling 2 lands, that's not an out anymore. At least unless our opponent doesn't draw another red source. But yeah, looks like Ulamog is going to be able to get there. As we keep drawing lands, unfortunately, but that's fine. We have a blocker for possible haste creatures. And we can also take a look at the opponent's library here. So it looks like lots of allies with some cheap removal. As well as some reprisals, which are pretty good against us. And there's Woodland Wanderer, just to show you. As we get a 6/6 with Vigilance and Trample. And an attack will be lethal, as well as our opponent being dead on his draw step. Alright, sweet. Managed to get there, thanks to Languish. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's take a look at our opener, which is all lands. So let's try another one. And this one's also basically all lands, but at least it has a Kiora and will have perfect mana. So we'll keep it, and Evolving Wilds can grab a green source So next turn we can play Vine. And then we can play Pilgrim's Eye into Kiora. And hopefully by then we'll have found some action. And also we'll have 2 basics for these 2 battle lands to come into play untapped. Opponent on Sun Petal Grove turn 1, so not the fastest start. Alright, Languish is a nice one, so now I have to decide what land we get with the Gatecreeper Vine. So, don't have double white yet and don't have double black yet. Given that we have Languish in hand, might want to get the double black first. And then we have all the other colors checked off, so let's grab a swamp. And then next turn we can play out the Pilgrim's Eye and perhaps grab a Plains. Alright, Gatecreeper Vine. This is a bug with Rogue's Passage, which doesn't show up as tapped. There we go. Let's see what it grabs. Alright, a swamp. So might be playing against another multicolor deck, although Rogue's Passage seems greedy if you're playing lots of colors. Alright, we drew the plane, so now we can grab another color. Yeah, let's, I guess, grab an island. So we have a double blue for part of the Water Veil. And also probably should have played out one of our black sources in case we do want to play Languish next turn. Although it does seem pretty unlikely given the opponent's start. More likely to play Kiora. And then hopefully we get to protect Kiora with this Languish long enough for Kiora to do some damage. Although our opponent does have the Rogue's Passage, so our blockers won't be able to hold off our opponent's creatures indefinitely. Second Gatecreeper Vine will grab another swamp, alright. Radiant Flames is interesting, so another way to clear the board if we have to. Let's start by attacking. And now we have to decide if we want to start plussing Kiora or minusing. Given that we have 2 sweepers, it might actually be realistic to try and ultimate Kiora. So yeah, let's try it out. On the other hand, we might want to minus to try and find some creatures to close out the game. Yeah, it's tricky. I think I'll plus for now, and then we can decide next turn if we want to change our plan. Right, 4 mana. Opponent could also have a Languish here, which would be completely fine. Alright, Evolutionary Leap instead, but no green mana to activate it quite yet. And a Shadows of the Past. Alright. So our opponent could sacrifice 1 Gatecreeper Vine next turn. We could stop it by casting a Radiant Flames, but then our opponent gets to scry a bunch. Which I don't think is something we want to do. I would rather have him spend his green mana sacking his Gatecreeper Vine, and then maybe we can sweep the board next turn. Although it looks like we're gonna play out another Pilgrim's Eye. So let's attack for 1. And our opponent still no pressure. Also can't deal damage to Kiora with Shadows, even if he does get to activate it. So yeah, let's just keep deploying creatures. Opponent likely to have a card like Languish, but that's fine. Let's grab a Forest and plus Kiora. Now it's 6, so 3 more turns for the ultimate and 2 sweepers in hand. And looks like our opponents might be struggling on mana a little bit. so even activating the leap won't really help him find lands. Still only one green source. Right, there's a Languish we were expecting. Opponent gets to scry a bunch, so gets to find a land, but hasn't done anything this turn. And we still have 2 sweepers, so unless he finds like a 6/6 giant next turn to threaten Kiora, I think we're in a good spot. And even then we can actually Languish plus Radiant Flames to take out a bigger creature. So looks like ultimating Kiora might actually be happening. Alright. And that's the perfect draw, sweet. So yeah, let's go ahead and cast Oblivion Sower, which funnily enough will exile the top card our opponent scried to the top with Shadows of the Past. Yes. I hope I clicked yes, I did. Alright, is this screen stuck? I hope not. Alright. This is awkward. Alright, looks like at least one of the windows has disappeared, but our screen is still blurry. Oh, there we go, we fixed it. Thank God. So we did not plus Kiora there, because, well, we didn't get a chance to. But at least we get to keep playing. Opponent plays Flashback Marauder, not much we can do about it. Opponent can also sacrifice the Flashback with the ability on the stack, which is smart. So still gets to draw a card and scry. And meanwhile we should probably... so gets a Gideon, which is fine. Meanwhile we should probably activate these Evolving Wilds our opponent graciously gave us to grab some land so we don't draw those. So yeah, Kiora should be 1 loyalty higher. Have to sacrifice a Sower. Opponent gets to scry some more. 3 creatures in the graveyard for the shadows so far. And Angelic Edict was a card our opponent likely scried, or yeah, it's more likely that our opponent scried one of the lands to the top earlier with the shadows. A land is nice, as we actually get to untap it with Kiora. But it's still gonna have Summoning Sickness, if I'm not mistaken, so there's no point in activating it to attack. So yeah, I think we'll just pause the turn here. I mean, yeah, it should have Summoning Sickness. I could have tried to find out if it's implemented correctly, but lands still have Summoning Sickness the turn they come into play. So, Suppression Bonds, that's a bummer. So yeah, that actually stops Kiora. Stops it from activating its abilities. And now we're stuck with a bunch of lands and no creatures. Roil Spout. We can Roil Spout our own Lumbering Falls. I guess we're attacking with a hexproof land here. So we're not in a great spot, unfortunately. Our entire game plan was around Kiora, but now our opponent stopped that. So unless we draw a way to remove this enchantment, be it Ulamog or our own Angelic Edict, it's not looking too good for us. At least our opponent is still stumbling on mana a bit. And we do have some removal spells at least. Alright, Graveblade Marauder is fine. Opponent also has a Gideon, instead plays Visionary. So we get to languish those away. And then attack with our land. Planar Outburst, interesting. Can also use this one to animate a land, so that's 8 mana total to awaken it. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can put it on a forest and attack for 4. And then next turn a Roil Spout and attack for a bunch. I don't hate that. Our other option is just Languish and attack, which is also good, because if we Languish after awakening, then we lose the land we awakened. So I think I actually like Languishing a bit more here. Make sure we can still animate our Lumbering Falls. Our opponent will be able to activate the shadows, but he's stuck on mana, so I don't think he'll spend too much effort in activating that one. Alright, we can animate this one, make sure not to tap the Lumbering Falls itself when activating it. And attack. Our best draw, clearly Ulamog here. Would not be too sad with one of our other planeswalkers or even our Converge creatures. Alright, land for the opponent. For 6 mana, what's he gonna do? Still have lots of removal in hand. Gideon is fine. We can Roil Spout that one. Alright, Brutal Expulsion, also not a bad one. So what happens if we Roil Spout with Awaken? We still should be able to activate the Lumbering Falls. So let's go for it. Return this one. Animate our forest. Make sure not to tap Sad Forest. And still leave green mana up for activating the Lumbering Falls. And this looks fine. Alright. And activate the Lumbering Falls. Yep, looks good. Does our opponent have a removal spell of sorts? Nope, just gonna activate the shadows to drain us for 2. Which is fine, as we hit for 7. And next turn still have access to Planar Outburst with Awaken. And the reason not to put the Awaken counters on the Lumbering Falls is that when it's awakened and not activated, it doesn't actually have hexproof, so our opponent could possibly kill the land. Instead it's gonna exile it with an Angelic Edict, which is fine. So now, let's see. Another Languish, so lots of removal here. I think we just Radiant Flames, activate Lumbering Falls attack, keep up Expulsion. So let's see. Tap this for red, tap this for black, tap this for white, and make sure to use this mana. Didn't actually have to be for 3, but let's cycle until it's tapped correctly. There we go. Gideon down. Opponent gets to scry. So we won't actually be able to keep up the expulsion if we attack, but that's fine. We can still bounce the creature. Alright. Yeah, if we still had the land, then we would have been able to, but we did not. And if our opponent taps out for a creature, I think we can just Awaken Outburst and attack for the win. Otherwise we can just Expulsion to bounce a creature or do some other things. So sad that we didn't get to Ultimate Kiora, Yep, opponent can make a land all he wants. Alright, that's also pretty good. I guess this is a nice way to finish this. So we can actually exile the suppression bonds. Might as well exile the Zendikar's Roil there. Alright, we want to see Kiora Ultimate. There we go. Exile this one. So yeah, the correct play is just to get rid of this and attack with the awakened land from Outburst, which would kill our opponent on the spot. But this is much sweeter. Finds Nissa. Also just realized our opponent is playing with a few more than 60 cards. So get to untap this one and this one. And pause the turn. So next turn we can also ultimate Kiora, unless our opponent has another suppression bonds. And we still get to awaken the Planar Outburst to attack for 4. So Nissa is fine. He's probably gonna make a token, otherwise he's just dead on board. And then we can just fight the token with the Krakens, or Octopuses rather. And opponent decides to play Elemental Bond, has all the enchantments he could possibly want. And does make a token which will trigger the Elemental Bond and draw our opponent a creature. And here's a known bug with Ulamog: if we actually decided to attack Nissa, his exile the top 20 wouldn't trigger, even though it should, because it says when Ulamog attacks, not when he attacks a player. So with that being said, let's ultimate Kiora. We could +1 another turn, but let's just finish this. Fight this multiple times to make sure it's dead. And opponent gets a bunch of triggers, which is fine. We still have Brutal Expulsion to counter whatever our opponent could do here, but there's nothing our opponent could do here. And now we'll get to attack with Ulamog for the win. No need to do anything else. Sweet. Alright. Well, let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's take a look at our opener, which is interesting, and I think we can keep. The Gatecreepers can get black and perhaps also blue mana to enable Languish and Sire. Alright, another land. Let's lead with the Vista. Next turn we can go Mountain, grab a Swamp, and then Gatecreeper into grab an island, most likely, maybe the second Swamp, maybe by then withdrawn one of those colors. Opponent also on Gatecreeper Vine, so not off to a quick start, which favors the Sire. Alright. And we draw Woodland Wanderer, is a good one. Let's grab a Swamp. And pause the turn. Let's see what our opponent does here. Hopefully it's another slow thing. Alright. Can either put counters on his creatures or gain some life. So it looks to be a ramp deck probably. As we draw another Languish. Yeah, let's play Gatecreeper And I think we want to get our blue source for the Sire. We could not play the Gatecreeper, but yeah, I think we do want to. Especially against a ramp deck, Languish is not going to be great, while we do want to make sure to cast the Sire. And might as well play the island, although we are exposing ourselves to a Monvuli Acid Moss, which could kill some of our lands. So I think we actually might want to play Canopy Vista here, which will come into play tapped. But we don't really mind losing one of our Vistas. So hopefully no Acid Moss here. Alright, land is fine. Instead puts a counter on the Gatecreeper, interesting. Instead of gaining life, and alright, maybe we misjudged what our opponent's up to. Murasa Ranger. So can pay mana to grow it. So Languish might be good after all. That being said, we are just going to play a big Woodland Wanderer here. Maybe should have played the swamp, so we, in case we draw another swamp, we can play the Languish. So opponent on a landfall deck, but actually trying to attack with creatures. Alright, play a land, put a counter on this one. And could pay 4 to put 2 counters over there. Yep, so another 6/6. So Languish not gonna cut it anymore. But we still have lots of chump blockers here. And does our opponent attack? Does not. Interesting. Alright, Pilgrim's Eye can grab another black source. So I think we actually do offer the trade here. Since I won't mind trading, and we also have Vigilance, so it's up to the opponent to decide how he wants to handle things. Decides to take it. Now we want to play the Pilgrim's Eye, grabbing a swamp. And play a swamp so we have access to Languish if we have to use it. And then hopefully Sire will be surviving long enough to draw some cards, which should be good against the landfall deck. Unless they have something like a Reprisal. Opponent has to decide if he wants to attack. We can simply jump with a Gatecreeper. Could also double block, theoretically. Opponent does not attack, stays on defense, which makes sense. So now, let's see. We could attack and try and surprise our opponent with a Languish. We also have a second copy still. Yeah. Would like to get the Sire down, but I think this might actually be a problem down the line. So if our opponent suspects something, he probably doesn't block, and we get him for 6 free damage. If he does block, then we get to get him with Languish. Alright, so now we just get to play out our Sire anyways, and got in some free points of damage. So let's play out Cinder Glade, play out the Sire, and hopefully our opponent gives us some free cards. Reprisal would be the worst for us, as it's a clean answer to the Sire. We're pretty far away from casting 2 Languishes in the same turn. Alright, Nissa's Pilgrimage. Our opponent diving head first. And it's whenever land enters a battlefield, so that also counts ramp spells. There we go. We drew into Radiant Flames and Gatecreeper Vine. Our opponent going all in on this Ranger. Draw some more cards. There we go. Also exiling some cards from the opponent. See Tragic Arrogance and more ramp cards. And an 11/11 Ranger. We have to be careful if our opponent can give it trample somehow. Alright, Planar Outburst. That's a decent answer to the Ranger, I'd say. Let's see. Pretty far away from awakening it still. So 4, we can't Gideon and Languish this turn. So I think, let's see. An attack with the Wanderer. We could still Languish plus Radiant Flames, but then we also lose our Sire, which isn't great. So maybe we just play Gideon and plus it and play Pilgrim's Eye. And attack for 1 in the air. Given that we have Outburst in hand, we do have an answer for the Ranger. Just want to get some more value out of the Sire first. So now we can play Gideon, make a token. Then play a Pilgrim's Eye. And next turn we might actually minus Gideon to make some bigger Pilgrim's Eyes which can fly over. Grab a White Source to awaken the Outburst. Discard, I guess, the Evolving Wilds, since we still have a Gatecreeper. Alright, let's see if our opponent lets us draw some more cards. So let's see. Next turn we'll have 8 mana. Alright, our opponent's gonna let us draw 6 cards here. But he is going to gain lots of life if he wants to, thanks to the retreat as well. So we're not gonna be able to Outburst, activate Gideon and somehow kill our opponent. But hopefully the card advantage from the Sire is gonna be enough to take over the game. Ulamog from the opponent might still be a problem if he has it. Although we do have Roil Spout to delay it. And their opponent plays Gideon. And their opponent could start attacking with the Ranger here. Does attack Gideon. Let's give up a Gatecreeper Vine. And let's see here. Radiant Flames for 2. And we could actually attack back for 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah. Ultimate Gideon or plus Gideon doesn't really matter here. Let's ultimate him just because. And then Radiant Flames for 2. Alright. And go to combat. And that's exactly 16. So didn't even need to cast any of these spells. Alright, and we got there. Okay, let's take a look at our opening hand. We are on the draw, and we have the awkward double forest opener. Yeah, I think this is a mulligan. This one is interesting. We just need to draw a land, and we're fine, given the 2 Gatecreepers, so, well, let's keep it. It's a little greedy, but we already have the green source, so any second land will do it. Yeah, still leading with the Glade. In case we draw a basic land, we can play Gatecreeper on 2, otherwise it's Gatecreeper on 3. but we also have a Radiant Flames to catch up in case our opponent is on a fast deck. And a Jace will also help us find more lands. Alright, looks like next turn Gatecreeper is gonna find an island, most likely. And then we'll get to cast all our spells. Citadel Castellan, alright. At least we have a Roil Spout to answer it. Okay, not drawing many lands here, but luckily have 2 Gatecreepers. Grab an island and play it. So hopefully we have some time to deploy cards like Jace and don't have to use our cards too defensively. Definitely blocking here. Opponent could have a Wild Size to give his creature trample to still get it renowned, but that's fine. Does not have the Wild Size. It's gonna follow it up with a Primal Hunt Beasts, which sets up our Radiant Flames quite nicely. And I won't be too greedy here, so I'll just go for it. A nice easy 2-for-1. Also takes care of a hexproof creature, which is otherwise quite problematic. Although I guess we do have quite a large number of sweepers. So here we don't have double black yet, we don't have double white yet. So we can kind of choose which way we go here. I think we go for white. And next turn, let's see, we could play out a sizable Skyrider Elf. Or we could just go Jace plus Gatecreeper. Alright. Another Evolving Wilds is not bad. I think... Let's see, yeah, we can go Jace plus Gatecreeper here. And then play out the Evolving Wilds, which can grab a Swamp. And I guess we also take another Forest here. And then we'll have some 5/5 Skyrider Elves coming down, as well as Roil Spout with Awaken. And Sire of Stagnation to draw some cards. Alright, our opponent can attack. Can also activate the Sunblade Elf here. Let's just block. And activate the Evolving Wilds. Get a Swamp. Opponent has a 2/4 and Angelic Edict is gonna exile Jace, which is sad, but is still fine. Alright, nice. So we have the option of casting the Wanderer here, or Skyrider Elf, or even the Sire of Stagnation. Opponent 1 card in hand. I kind of like playing out the Sire. Doesn't stop the flyer, but we're still at 19. Opponent probably doesn't need to play more lands. But this seems mana efficient. And 7 toughness means we can block the elf all day long. And then we have some time to deploy our Converge creatures and to use Roil Spout on the flyer if we have to. Alright, Nimbus Wings. So now we get to Roil Spout the Sunblade Elf. Diversifies his threats nicely. But still only taking 6. And I think I like Roil Spouting the Aven here. We don't also get to play the Skyrider Elf, unfortunately. But Roil Spouting the Aven resets the Renown, which seems better. So we might also want to awaken the Roil Spout. And we could actually play Evolving Wilds and awaken onto the Evolving Wilds. So it can attack right away. So we attack for 9. Next turn play a 5/5. And I think we're in decent shape. We know what our opponent's drawing here. Opponent has to decide if he wants to pump the Elf or replay the Aven. Replays the Aven. Hits us for 3. We also still have a way to gain life if we really have to. Alright, Reprisal. Yeah, that's actually a nice one to keep up. So we might want to play the Wanderer, as our opponent is very likely gonna activate the Sunblade Elf. But let's attack first. So the safest play... Let's see, if we play the Elf for 4, our opponent is gonna suspect that we might have a Reprisal. But it does force our opponent to use the pump ability on the Elf. If we play Wanderer, he might just play whatever he draws. That being said, our opponent's at 10, so he's dead on board. Yeah, we could go either way here. A 5/5 also just blocks the Sunblade Elf. But yeah, using Reprisal seems like the sweetest play. Pause the turn. So now our opponent should not suspect Reprisal, while if we play the Elf for 4, he probably suspects it. But yeah, he's dead either way, so he probably has to keep this on defense. But there's not much he can do. Yep. So let's see if the Artificial Intelligence attacks. Does not. Plays a 1/1 double striking flyer. Alright, let's attack with everyone. Opponent is forced to block. That's fine. Not dead yet. And let's play out this one for 5, still keeping up a Reprisal. And unless our opponent finds a sweeper, but even the Outburst will still keep Evolving Wilds around, since it's a land, and we can also attack with the Shambling Vents, so yeah, we're in a pretty good spot here. Sweet. I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.